Well,
Let's
hi,
start.
hi, Bengt. How you doing?
Hi, Belinda. Nice to see you again.
Okay. I want to ask you, since you a few years ago you were awarded Beat Poet Laureate of Sweden lifetime. What does that mean to you personally, and how has it helped your career?
Yeah, it has opened many doors, one can say, especially in the US. In Sweden, it hasn't meant much. But in the US and perhaps in other countries like England, Wales, where I've been performing, yeah, it has opened doors and I got more offers to perform. And
Mm.
also, maybe it's been easier for me to publish books. Uh, my sixth book of English poetry was just recently published. Uh, if there is no tomorrow, and the seventh one is coming pretty soon too, from Venetian Spiderweb Press.
That's William DeVault's press, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. I find it interesting that you had not written poetry or painted before you were locked up in a Turkish prison for having 30 grams of hash. And
That's true.
how did being in prison inspire you to write and paint?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wasn't that old when I got busted. I mean, I was 19. So, and when when the police took me in 1969, I just turned from 68 to 69. This was like the first week of January 1969. I was in a pretty bad shape, a very heavy psychosis. I won't get into that, but that lasted for almost like a year before it sort of went away. And so when I got inside there, finally, there were a lot of people inside that inspired me, influenced me, and helped me. There were the Italian artist Antonio Rasile. It's the first one that spoke to me, and he inspired me to start writing. And then there was Koji Morrishita, a Japanese guy who an artist and a musician. He was taken by the police together with me, and he got 8.5 years for the same 30 grams that I had. And for the first 6 months, he didn't talk to me, but then we got to be the best of friends. And he was a big inspiration. So I started to read such a lot when I was inside there. It was like I was a blotting paper. I was like, I needed to catch up, sort of, because I never even got to high school. And I read all the books I could find, and it was like lots. I mean, you had lots of books in there. So I went through all the Russian masters of the novel, and French and US, and you name it. I read all of it, and poetry, lots of poetry. I started, and then after reading poetry for a while, I started to write my own. The first person that inspired me was Rabindranath Tagore, Indian poet, painter, and many things. And he inspired me in a way. So I started, he was writing stuff like in a very Indian tradition of speaking to some higher authority, higher god or something. And I felt very, very at home with that. So I started to talk to someone in my poetry, and I made long, long poems. So that's how I started. Then William Blake was another early influence, and I started to write poems like William Blake, rhyming, and some of them were actually pretty good.
Okay.
And then I got into Dylan Thomas, and he really blew my head off because his way of writing was so new and special and heavy. And I mean, I liked the musical way he wrote and the way his topics and yeah. And when my first book was published in Wales in 2014.
Did,
Uh,
did some of the poems you wrote in prison make it into your first book?
no, not in the English version. No, they
Oh,
did.
but in Swedish.
I have some of my early poems in my first Swedish poetry collection. Yeah.
Well, did you find writing and painting to be healing to you somehow? Or just
Yeah,
felt
yeah. It just felt very good to do it. I felt it was like finding myself in a way. It was
well,
this was really who I was, and I was just expanding, understanding and writing. And I was my English wasn't that good in the beginning. So when I was reading in English, everything I read was in English. When I was reading, I used to have a notebook and a pen. I wrote down all the words I didn't know, and then in the evening I looked them all up. I wrote down the meaning, and then I started to use the words I learned in my own poetry.
did you keep in contact with your fellow prisoners once you were out?
I kept in contact with a lot of them from the beginning. Most of them are gone now, sadly. But I still have contact with Billy Hayes, the main character of the movie. I still have him on Facebook.
Right.
He sometimes writes on my blurbs on my poetry collections.
So we should say here, for those who may not know, there was actually a book written about uh, being in a Turkish prison by one of your fellow prison mates, I guess, Billy Hayes. And I remember
Yeah,
in that movie in the late 70s, and it was pretty powerful. And it was, I think the book was a bestseller also.
yeah. It started off with a book, and then Oliver Stone got his hands on it, and he made a script for the movie. And then Alan Parker directed it. Yeah, it was it made a very big impact, that movie.
And
And
in that
in
movie, which
yeah,
character was based on you?
there's a character called Erich, a blonde guy doing yoga, etc. And
Ah,
yeah,
it seems like in some way you could say prison was really good for you.
it actually, yeah, you can say that it was good. I was such a bad shape, and I kind of woke up in jail, and regained my consciousnness, and almost like remade my personality, because I was like nothing when I got busted. Such a bad shape, and so I rebuilt my personality piece by piece, and the reading and the painting and the writing helped me in that process.
Did you also have access to a drum there, or I guess you could anything's a drum if you hit it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, no, I didn't have a drum. I had a flute, and I
Oh,
had a guitar.
oh,
I started to write my own songs, but they weren't very good. But I
well,
made a lot of songs. I used to sit and I remember I used to learn all the Dylan songs from Blonde and Blonde and Highway 61 Revisited. I used to know all these songs with like 100 verses.
well, this is a good time to mention Beat Point Society, a group that I believe turns your poetry into songs. How did that
Yeah,
come about?
yeah, they do. Yeah, it was. I was living in a different part of Stockholm than I am today, and I met this woman. She was a singer. This is like 20 years ago, and she was really keen on trying to find musicians to put music to my poetry, because she really liked them. And it took a few years, but eventually she asked me to join. A guitarist came Mats, and a keyboard player called Olof, and me in her apartment. And I came with my poetry and my djembe, and they started straight off making music with my poetry. And I tagged along on my djembe. But before the first meeting was over, we had 2 new songs.
Wow.
And so it carried on. It kept making new songs. We rehearsed, blah blah blah, and yeah. And the years went by, and finally this year we had our first album ready on vinyl and on all the musical platforms. So if anyone is interested, it's Beat Poet Society, and the record is called um, The Ricochet of a Virus.
Oh, okay. That's a memorable title, Ricochet of a Virus. And so any music platform you can think of, it's
Yeah,
available.
it should be all over the place. Yeah,
Apple, YouTube, SoundCloud,
yeah,
all of that stuff. Okay.
yeah.
Um, so what are your current projects? Right beside Beat Point Society.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I'm also an artist, so I paint, and I have I just recently took home some paintings for an exhibition, And I also started to work with clay making sculptures, and that is really new. Painting I've been doing. I had my first exhibition in Copenhagen in 1974. 75, I think, sorry. And so I've been painting for many, many years. Now I have my own studio where I live.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But recently I joined a collective of people that work with clay. That's really fun. They have an oven and everything. So that's really exhilarating, and I really love it. It's beautiful to see them have the clay in your hand. And I never know what I'm going to do. I just take a big lump of clay and I let the clay talk to me, and suddenly I have some really weird figure in my hands.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I hear you're coming to the States just in a few days, and most of it is related to poetry. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's I'm arriving in Rochester on the 25th of this month. I'm going to stay with my daughter for a bit and or sleep there. And then on the day after, I'm going to Corning to perform. Then I'm going to Rochester to perform. And then I'm going to go another place which I forgot. And then eventually I'm going to take the Greyhound down to New Albany in Kentucky, I think, and perform with Ron Whitehead. Uh-huh. And then my wife is joining me, and then we fly home from Columbus, I think.
Okay. All right. Do you have a poem you could share with us?
Of course. Tidal conclusions fly, ceremonial testimonies rake the circus floor every bloody Sunday. There are dead flowers in the machine, ghosts turning into echoes. The sky is not a metaphor. Solemn is a word bad trees can relate to. Volatility is a condition of time's ignition. Rulers in need of stretchers run for the sake of more to say under a sky long gone. Daredevil you in pajamas soliciting zebra crossings, taking no prisoners. Wielding swords of no return, you will not survive. Boats will check in at midnight. Terminals fatally wrecked, trains losing control and tracks. There's no table or tide to trust.
All righty. All right. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful time in the States.
Thank you.
You'll still be on Facebook a little bit on your cell phone?
Yeah. I guess I have to do. Yeah, I will. I will have my special phone with me there with the US card in it.
And thank you for giving us some time today.
You're welcome. And nice to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This poem I started to write about 10 years ago, and during the years I think I have edited probably like 4 or 5 times. But this, I hope and I think, is the final version. It's called A Stab in the Dark 5. Old man downs cloaked severity at daybreak's first call, on his way to close his heart and tail on a cold and flawless winter day. Turning all bows forever into rolling fire, beneath a cold private sky, he cries for the children burning in books lost. Bushes, etched into winter nudity, exudes bright flittering clouds of a warm feathered life. Tears of irrevocability ices the slow sea where mighty mackerels hum. He must forego all masters of oblivion on his way to the sea. 1 billion tears have not flowed in vain. Old man's final call will soon roll fatal life's condition, and nothing but broken tail lights will guide the concluding of the day. Slandering seas will die before breakfast in a temporal disgust, lust as a slow burning jellyfish in contempt. It is persistence that holds him fretting and falling. The falling could have kept him from staring at the end. Good night, weary wisdom's fading. Tonight no one can play elusive. With a smile of pale stars, shadows will not play. Death has no further say when it falls into broken night. Haunting rise and intangible ends give wind to voices lost in blame, lament and salt. Time is cruel at midnight's falling. Water puts shanty towns to sleep with shimmering waves and moonlit skeletons dancing. Theft is located somewhere between the third and the fourth vertebra, signaling a lost tale. Prostitution goes for money, while translucent skin tells another tale. Codes of conduct define what he is. As he materializes in what he sees, it is time to sleep. This is a part of unisex electroacoustic universal art music, which is a part of the Total Recall project.